All right, let's just jump right in. We throw this word culture around all the time, right? But what does it actually mean? Because I can tell you it's way more than just fancy art or the music you listen to. It's like the very fabric of our lives. I mean, just think about it for a second. Culture is in the food you eat, right? Those recipes your grandma made, the flavors that just taste like home. That's culture. And it's in the holidays you count down the days to, the ones with all the little rituals and traditions that just bring everyone together. Heck, it's even in the clothes you put on every morning. They can say so much about who you are, what you do, your whole identity. So yeah, we see it everywhere. It's in all these things we can touch and see every single day. But what's the glue holding it all together? What is it really? Well, probably the best way to wrap your head around it is to think of it like an iceberg. Seriously, because the biggest, most important parts are the ones you can't even see. They're all hidden under the water. Which brings us to our first big idea here. Culture is way more than meets the eye. Okay, so let's break down this whole iceberg thing. Above the water, you've got all the stuff we just talked about, the things you see, the food, the clothes, the buildings, the art. But the real engine of culture, the part that has all the power, is what's below the surface. That's where you find the invisible foundation, all our shared beliefs, our values, and all those unwritten rules, we call them norms, that kind of tell us how to act. And hey, this isn't just some clever metaphor we made up. Way back in the day, an anthropologist named Edward B. Tyler called it a complex whole. He was talking about everything: knowledge, belief, art, morals, laws, customs, you name it. Basically, he knew it was all the stuff we pick up just by being a member of our society. Okay, so let's start with the easy part. Let's talk about the visible parts of culture, that tip of the iceberg. This is what experts call material culture, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's all the physical stuff a society creates. Your phone, the chair you're sitting in, the roads, the buildings, all of it. Every single one of those objects is a real, tangible piece of a culture's story. But that just leads to more questions, doesn't it? Like, why is the building designed that way? Why do some people use a fork and others use chopsticks? None of this stuff just appears out of nowhere. So what's propping it all up? What are those invisible rules we all seem to follow without even thinking about it? All right, let's take a deep breath and dive below the surface, because this is where we get to the good stuff, the invisible rules that really shape everything. And here's the absolute key. You are not born with culture. It is not genetic. It's not in your DNA. You learn it. And the word for that learning process is enculturation. It means that from the second you're born, you're like a little sponge, just soaking up all the rules and values from the world you grow up in. And a massive part of what we're learning are things called norms. I love this analogy. Think of norms as the unwritten traffic rules for social life. They're just these unspoken agreements on how we're supposed to act, and they're what keep things from being total chaos. Now, not all norms are created equal, not even close. You've got folkways, which are kind of like the small stuff, everyday things, like, not talking super loud in a library. If you break one, you might get a nasty look, but that's about it. But then you have mores. And these are the big ones. They're tied to a society's deepest values. Think laws against theft or murder. You break one of those, and the consequences are, well, a whole lot more serious than a dirty look. Okay, so once you start to see how much your own life is shaped by these invisible rules, it makes you wonder, right? What happens when you run into a culture that has a totally different rule book? And that really leads us to two completely different ways of looking at other people. On one side, you've got ethnocentrism. This is basically when you use your own culture as the ultimate measuring stick for everyone else. It's that feeling that my way is the right way. But the other approach is something called cultural relativism. And this is all about taking a step back. It's trying to understand a culture on its own terms, from the inside, without judging it based on your own rulebook. And really, that's the heart of cultural relativism. It's about actually appreciating that people do things differently. It's about accepting that different isn't the same as wrong. And it's about realizing that something that seems totally bizarre to you might make perfect sense to someone else in their world. So let's recap. We started at the tip of the iceberg, the stuff we can see. Then we dove way down to that invisible foundation of norms and values. So now, let's see how those powerful, invisible rules build something really concrete, something every single society has: family. Let's just take marriage, for example. Every culture on Earth has rules about it, and probably the most universal rule of all is the incest taboo. basically rules against marrying your close relatives. That one rule is a huge part of what forces people to build connections outside their immediate family. And wow, the forms that marriage can take are all over the map. Monogamy, one spouse at a time, is pretty common, sure, but lots of cultures have practiced polygamy. That can mean polygyny, which is one man with several wives, or much more rarely, it can mean polyandry, which is one woman with several husbands. And you know, in a lot of places today, including where many of us live, there's a new pattern called serial monogamy. So you can only be married to one person at a time, but it's become super common for people to have more than one spouse over their lifetime, you know, through divorce and remarriage. It's kind of like a modern update on this ancient idea. So what does this all boil down to? It's this. From the tiniest little unwritten rule about how to stand in an elevator, all the way up to these massive structures like family and marriage, culture is the shared, invisible stuff that makes society work. It's the foundation for everything. But here's the thing, culture never stands still. It's always changing, always evolving, and that leaves us with one last question, something for you to chew on. As your own culture keeps changing, what parts of it do you think are worth fighting to preserve? What parts do you want to carry into the future?